All right, we're going to call this special council meeting to order. Item number 1, KCFiber presentation. Is someone on staff kicking this off, or are we just going straight to presentation here? Straight to presentation. Good evening. Welcome.
Does this work? Yep.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Honorable Mayor, City Council, my name is Aaron Wendell. I'm one of the managing partners with KCFiber. And tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the liNKCity network and KCFiber and all the great things that it does. Hopefully you'll think so. Right here, the first slide, obviously we have the nice gateway to North Kansas City. And North Kansas City has the fastest broadband in the world at this point. So what is KCFiber, liNKCity? It's a city-owned all-fiber network delivering high-speed internet throughout North Kansas City to businesses and residents. Approximately 45.3 route miles of underground fiber. There are 8 huts located around the city housing our network gear and other components. And if you look at our network maps or talk to us at any time, you may hear us refer to those as APs, and they're numbered 1 through 8. And it is the only broadband provider in the world able to deliver 100 gigabit and above speeds to residential customers. Next button. So a little history. I'm pretty sure none of you were on the city council when this all transitioned. But back a while ago, liNKCity was conceived as a solution for the PID issue, and that's the Paseo Industrial District, which is bordered on the east by I-35 and on the west by the railroad tracks. And it was real hard to get anything over there. And so a lot of the business over there, the businesses were complaining that they didn't have internet and they couldn't get any. And so to solve that issue, the city decided to lay their own fiber. They did it in 2006 using casino money at a cost of approximately $16 million, and they operated it as a city-run utility from 2006 to 2014. So if you were a resident at those times, you would actually get your internet bill on your water bill. The city incurred a lot of losses while they were running it. In the last 3 years there, you can see that they lost, those are negatives in front of the numbers, not dashes. So we're $385,000 in 2011 to 2012, we're $422 in 2012, 2013, and the last year the city operated it, they lost $914,000. City council was not real happy with its performance, so in 2014 they decided to divest themselves of the utility. So NOCIX, which is us, then known as Data Shack, we had approached the city with a proposal to provide free internet to the school district a few years earlier. So we already had a relationship with the school district and we had some experience providing the free internet. The city, which again was sick of the liNKCity losses at the time, approached us in early 2014 about the possibility of operating and maintaining the network. So they issued an RFP exploring the possibility of selling the network or finding someone to operate it. The RFP got 4 responses, 3 offers to purchase, and ours to operate and maintain. Whoops, too far. So the 3 offers to purchase the network were significantly lower than the city believed the asset was worth. Our plan included the offer of free internet access to the residents while maintaining the majority, while mitigating the majority of the losses. So not without skepticism, the city entered into an agreement with us to operate and maintain the city network. And not without skepticism is a nice way of saying that the city manager at the time laughed at us when we proposed free internet for the residences. KCFiber was established as the entity that would fulfill the contract requirements backed by NOCIX. So here's some highlights of the agreement that we currently have with the city. It's a 10-year term. It ends in September of 2024. It requires a 1-year notice to terminate, and it renews for 1-year terms after that. Profits and losses are split evenly between NOCIX and the city. Provides for free internet access to all residents, schools, libraries, and churches within the NKC city limits. It limits the city's share of the losses to $150,000 per year. It exempts the 2 river crossings in downtown KCMO. So there's fiber that goes across the Heart of America Bridge down to 11th Street in downtown Kansas City, comes across to Grand, back up, and across the ASB Bridge. Those are still the responsibility of the city. In practice, we still maintain those. It's just kind of a question of who pays for it when we do. And again, KCFiber's performance is guaranteed by NOCIX. So then the big question is, who is NOCIX? Well, first of all, there is how we pronounce it up there. The name actually comes from the abbreviation for Network Operations Center, which is NOC. And then the IX is actually the Roman numeral 9. And there in the first bullet, you see that refers to the date that we were actually founded on, 9/9/99. We are the largest internet as a service provider, infrastructure as a service provider in the Midwest. We have the largest network density in our data center in North America. We're at 1,014 networks. The next largest data center in KC has 73. We have over 2 terabits of network capacity. That's 2,000 gigabits. And we have over 45,000 customers from 176 countries. On the right side of the screen there, you'll see the largest networks in the U.S. ranked by connectivity, or how many networks they actually connect to. I picked out some that you would be familiar with. We have T-Mobile at 12, Verizon at 15. We are at the 27th largest network in the country, followed by Charter at 29, Facebook at 45, Apple at 59, and then a few local names you'd be familiar with, Google Fiber, 207, and Cerner at 216. So why does the partnership work? Well, knock-icks provides massive economies of scale that KCFiber and liNKCity benefit from. We pay far less for our bandwidth. We pay far less for a lot of our resources than the city was having to pay for the amount that they needed. We employ multiple core infrastructure engineers. And core infrastructure engineers are pretty much the top of the pyramid as far as network engineers go. There's probably 200 of them in the country, and we all know each other, and knock-icks employs 3. We house the infrastructure for some of the most popular networks on the planet locally here in North Kansas City. So down at 16th and Clay, which is where our data center is located, we have Google, we have Netflix, YouTube, PlayStation, all in the building. So if you got a new PlayStation for Christmas and you're downloading a game for that, that comes from the building on 16th and Clay. If you want to watch something on YouTube, like people streaming this right now, it's coming from 16th and Clay. Same thing for Google searches. They're actually fed out of a box in the data center at 16th and Clay. We have additional staff and resources that we can allocate to KCFiber projects on an as-needed basis, reducing the need to hire outside contractors or employ additional unnecessary staff. So if we need somebody for an hour to help pull fiber, we can allocate that from one of our maintenance guys. We don't have to have another outside plant guy on staff. So what's changed since we took over the network back in 2014? So before KCFiber came along, all residences and businesses on the network shared a 1 gigabit connection. So that's everybody in North Kansas City, businesses and residents combined, all had 1 gigabit of capacity. Our network, like I said before, is 2 terabits, so the network has over 2,000 times that capacity at this point. Traffic from North Kansas City was routed to Chicago or Dallas, so to get your Google or your YouTube or your Netflix, you had to go to one of those cities when you left this network. Today, all that traffic stays in North Kansas City. The highest residential speed available at the time was 30 megabits, and the city charged $129.95 for that plan. Today, the lowest speed we offer is over 30 times greater, and it's free. The highest speed, the physical equipment, that's the actual boxes that supply the bandwidth, on the residents could handle was 100 megabits. Today, it's 1.4 terabits. And we've drawn a lot of new businesses to town, including the iWorks facility, which houses over 140 small businesses, all using the KCFiber network. So we all love our children, or we're supposed to. And yeah, my wife tells me that when someone asks me who my favorite child is, I'm supposed to name one of my own. So anyway, the North Kansas City School District was operating with a single 250 megabit internet connection. We currently provide a 100 gigabit internet connection free of charge, saving the district an estimated $1.2 million per year. This enables streaming, online courses, online testing that wasn't possible before. And the way this came about is actually my partner Brooks, who's sitting right here. He's had children in the North Kansas City School District for 30 some odd years. And one of his daughters, this was shortly after they had given out all of these new devices to the students, the iPads and the laptops and those sorts of things. And his daughter came home, and so he asked, well, how's it going? And she says, well, they're great, but they don't work. We can't stream anything. The video's choppy, it buffers. We can't really do anything on them, so we're not really using them a whole lot. So we reached out to the school district and said, why? Why did the school district spend all this money on this equipment, but they can't use them? So the school district said, well, we just don't have the capacity to handle all of these devices. We're working on it. We're trying to formulate a plan. We'll get there. And so we said, well, that's something that we can help with. And so we went ahead and reached out to liNKCity at the time, and liNKCity supplied the fiber, and we supplied the capacity, and we lit the school up with a gig at the time. That gig then became 10 gig, became 40 gig, and now it's 100 gig. So the district has about 29,000 devices, and it used to take them all weekend to update those devices. So if a new update comes out for your phone or whatever, if they've got all those iPads, it took them 2 days, sometimes 3 or 4 days to get all those devices updated. Now they can do it in a matter of hours or a couple minutes. Because of our relationship with the school district, we were talking to them a little bit ago, and we were talking about fiber mapping and documentation for their fiber network. And they had a stack of CAD drawings, and that's how they map their stuff. So we said, well, why don't you have this in a digital form? Well, it's going to cost a lot. We've looked into it. It's going to be $150,000. So we just had the girl who does our mapping go ahead and do that for them and save them $150,000. So that's our children, but what's in it for you and the rest of the residents? Well, of course, like we've already talked about, faster speeds. The prices, obviously, well, you can't get much lower than free, but the prices for the businesses have also come down quite a bit. Better performance, lower latency, because we brought more of that traffic here into North Kansas City. And community engagement and local control. I mean, we're here in town. If you ever have a question about anything that goes on in the network, you're free to reach out to me or our organization. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. If this were a Google Fiber deployment, that guy would be in California, and you'd probably never get to talk to him. And just for a point of reference, based on 1,000 residential customers at $50 per customer, the free internet has been worth $4.8 million over the last 8 years to the citizens of North Kansas City. Now that's based on $50. Google Fiber charges $70. That figure would go to $6.7 million using that figure. Here's a few things that you don't see with KCFiber. One of our weaknesses is we're not real good at tooting our own horn. You're not going to see me standing in front of the dog pound with a giant check for $25 that I'm donating to them. We're just not we're not really visible that way. Not a very good public speaker, as you may have guessed. But during COVID, we removed all the data caps on all the businesses at no additional charge to make sure they had capacity to handle work from home. So with the businesses, you might get a 100 megabit plan, you might get a 500 megabit plan, those sorts of things. We took everybody's caps off to make sure that they had the capacity they needed. Also during COVID, we waived install fees for low-income residents without internet access whose children were suddenly required to attend school from home. We had a lot of people call us and say, hey, my kids are home, I can't afford $300. Okay, now we'll break that down to $25 a month if they can't afford the $300 up front. Some of these guys, they couldn't even afford $25 a month. So we just went ahead and waived fees for them. Those people still have internet access. We didn't go back and try and collect that after COVID or anything. They've still got it. We also provide the internet used for NKC firefighters, their connections at the stations. We had been running the network for a few months, and I was curious as to why the fire trucks always pulled up in front of the building every month. And it turns out that and maybe you know this, I didn't know this at the time, but the fire stations have two internet connections. One is the city's internet connection, which they use for all their official business. But when the firefighters are not on a call or doing actual work in the station, there's some downtime. And so what they do is they pool their money, and they were buying an internet connection to, play games or watch movies or whatever they do when there's nothing else to do. They were paying for that. And so I didn't realize that was a thing. And so we went ahead and comped those connections for the firefighters. So the contract for KCFiber with the city is over in a little under 2 years. Regardless of the status of that agreement, KCFiber is working to expand outside the confines of North Kansas City. We get a lot of requests from all over the country from cities wanting us to do the same thing that we've done here in their city. As far away as California, as close as here in the metro. Our plan is to roll out residential service at a minimum of 10 gigs to a majority of locations in northwestern and northeastern Missouri. This would not be free, but that would be our minimum. We've applied for just under $100 million in state and federal grants from the current grant round that's now going on, and there will be additional grant rounds in Missouri totaling $2 billion for broadband expansion. These are our expansion maps that we've submitted to the state and to the federal government. The two on the left and the one on the top right are state grant programs. We pretty much go up into northwest Missouri there, and the one on the bottom right-hand corner is a federal grant application. The ones on the right actually border North Kansas City. They start at North Kansas City and then head east from there. We've gotten a couple endorsements here from a couple guys. This is B.J. Tanksley, who's the Director of Broadband Development for Missouri Department of Economic Development. It says KCFiber consulted extensively with this office, and their full participation in this coordination improved the office's understanding of this project and its role in the state's broadband plan as a whole. Based on that understanding and OBD research, which is the Office of Broadband Development, we strongly recommend funding this project, and that is actually his recommendation to the federal government for the funding on the federal grant application. This is from the state representative, and his name kind of moved there on me, but it's Lewis Riggs. He's state representative for the 5th District. He was also the chairman of the House Committee on Broadband Development for the state of Missouri. The KCFiber team are Missourians with considerable experience who understand the local market dynamics and the needs of the families who live in their project areas. They've been providing free ISP access to the North Kansas City School District and the citizens of North Kansas City for a decade. The company understands affordable broadband access and has developed its business model accordingly. It is my pleasure to support their efforts, and that was his recommendation for our state grant applications. I am now available to take questions.
The question slide. What do we got? Councilmember Silver.
Yes, I appreciate all that you've shown us here tonight, but I still have two serious problems. You say it's available to all residents of North Kansas City, but that's not true, because about 3/4 of our residents are renters, and they may or may not have access, depending on their landlords. Many of the apartment buildings have no access to KCFiber. The other is that if they do have access, they have to pay a connection fee each time a new resident moves into a unit. Now, I don't know of any other utility that charges a connection fee each time a person signs up moves in and for their gas, electric, water. Those are connected, and it's a matter of changing the billing in your office. There's no new connection fee. I still don't understand why you charge a connection fee each time.
Well, I can address the MDU issue first. So you're right. A lot of the apartment complexes, specifically the larger apartment complexes, don't have liNKCity. That is by their choice. What happens is you have a company like AT&T or Time Warner come in, and they go to these developers and they say, we will give you a kickback of X amount of dollars for every person that you have that signs up for our service as long as you sign an exclusivity agreement with us. I can't give a kickback on free service. So I'm not competitive with those apartment complexes to get in there and to service those customers. I would, but again, that's the deal. Now, the FCC is working to change some of that, but still, it's difficult for us to get in there when we can't offer the apartment complexes any incentives. On the topic of the $300 every time someone changes, well, that's spelled out in our agreement with the city, and I believe, and I have to look this again, but I believe we can go up as high as $500. The reason for that is because it defrays some of the cost of construction that goes above what it's allowed for. So it may cost me $1,000 to get to your house. It may cost me $0 to get to the next house. So I have to average those install costs over everybody in town. The other thing is that when someone connects to us for the first time, a new customer, what happens is we get a lot of calls from them because they're trying to hook up their TV, they're trying to hook up their computer, they've got their stove is internet enabled now and it's not connecting for some reason. And so there's a lot of support that goes into every new customer that comes along. And so that $300 not only helps defray the cost of installation, but it also helps defray the cost of that added support that we have to give to somebody when they first connect.
You can see, of course, that this creates quite a problem for apartment dwellers and for apartment owners and managers who are trying to provide this service to the residents of North Kansas City, this Kansas City Fiber. And each time they move in a new unit, that's a $300 lug that's put on them, even though the building is connected and the units are all connected. Now, I don't think the Evergy charges, if you move into a place and you have a problem with your electricity connection, they don't charge you anymore for coming out and taking care of it because you're a customer of theirs now. You've changed the account over. And it seems to me the account changeover is something that should cost cents, maybe dollars, but probably cents in changeover in your office structure. And that still doesn't explain any of that.
It's definitely something that we can look at, and it's something that we could look at an addendum to the agreement to change. But as far as, again, the apartment complexes go, they don't have, it's not our choice whether or not we can go in there. That's the property owner's choice. So there's really nothing that I can do about that.
Nothing you can do about that, but about the fact that once the building is connected and each unit is connected to Kansas City Fiber, a new tenant comes in, and they have to pay the reconnection fee all over. Seems like there's something you could do about that.
Yeah, that was negotiated by the city when we did the agreement. So it's codified in the agreement.
So that's something we would seriously have to look at if we have a new contract with you.
We would be open to that.
I think years ago when we had fiber, when it was set up, it was like $14 a month. Does that sound about right? It was on the water bill. It was about $14 a month, I think. And I think that probably is what did away with that $300 fee, is that everybody was paying a little bit every month. Is that a possibility?
The liNKCity had a $15 plan that was 1 megabit.
Yeah.
Back at the time. The $300 fee was actually the figure itself, $300, came about because that's what Google was charging for their 5 megabit free plan at that time, which they did away with a year after they introduced it. So we felt that the $300 was a number we kind of all settled on, and that's where it came from originally, was Google's plan. But yeah, so liNKCity originally had plans starting at $15 for 1 megabit, and they went up to the $130 for 30 megabits, was their residential range.
So if we were going to get rid of the $300, we'd have to come up with some other way to make that money. That was my whole point. It would have to be we would have to come up with a different way of collecting that money that we were more comfortable with. And I'm not saying that's the solution, but I know we used to pay a little bit every month. The only other thing about apartment complexes is I know you can't say we're going to give you kickbacks on something that's free, but is there something that we could do to reduce the connection fee for those apartment complexes? I mean, it would all have to be paid for. So these are all things that we would have to look at, the real cost of being able to do that and how we could make that happen so that we could connect more people. Because I also know people that have moved into an apartment and either not had access or not had the $300. So they had to go with something that was cheaper. But that's something, the money has to come from somewhere. So that's something that wouldn't be an overnight solution. We'd have to look.
So on the $300, if the $300 is overly burdensome to somebody, we will break that up. And we'll break that up down as far as $25 a month for a year. So they can pay that. Now, what happens if that person then moves out of that apartment in 6 months? Well, we're just out the other $150. So, we don't go after them or that sort of thing. But we will lower it to as far as $25.
I can definitely see your points. Like when I moved into my house, it was $300, but that probably made a lot more sense. They had to come out and actually run it to the house. The previous owner hadn't had it in the house. But I can see, if someone else comes out, then that expense probably isn't as high if it's already run into my basement per se, and you're just swapping out, I can say this wrong, a modem, I guess is what's in the house there.
Right, they're actually media converters, but close
See,
to
there
the
we go.
same thing.
Perfect. Media converter. Now I know what to call it from now on there. But yeah, no, I can definitely see that side as well. Anything down here? I'm pointing at you. Councilmember Clark, please.
I'm actually okay with it. I mean, I actually had to pay the extra $55 because once you pay the $300, it's not over because I had like an egress window cut out, and then you have to have them come back and reroute, and you pay again. One thing to your point, Councilmember Saper, is when you say that people have to come out and change each time. If there's a property owner, can't it stay in the property owner's name and they just extend it to that person? There's nothing that really needs to change hands? That's a quick question.
It goes with the account and not the property.
Okay, as far as how it's billed, because then we're not
Yes.
billed. The other thing is I think you are doing a good assistance by saying if you can't afford the $300 up front, $25 a month is I believe very reasonable to come up with, especially if they do move out in 6 months. And I don't know. I'm in agreement of the $25 a month breakdown.
And the part where I do agree is it's definitely in the contract, so that is a contractual thing as well. So better be clear on that too, as we already have been. Thank you, Councilmember Ridge.
Yeah, I was going to kind of piggyback off of what Clark was just talking about because I had a weird situation happen to me, and I love liNKCity. I don't mind the $300 bill. I think it's a great service, and that's for the quality of internet we get. It's tremendous. It's a good bargain, so I recommend everybody sign up. One thing that happened to me that's in relation to what I think you were just talking about is it was kind of weird. I moved from one house in North Kansas City to another house, and I had to pay the connection fee for moving houses. And then my tenant also had to pay, even though I was just leaving one house and going to another house, I had to pay a $300 connection fee, and the house already had liNKCity. And then the tenant moving into the house that I moved out of paid a $300 connection fee. And the way you could probably explain it better than I could, but they were just telling me, because I was like, can I just keep both houses in my name? Save my tenant $300, and they're like, no, you can only have one account per person, per household, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the reason we don't do that is because if we did that and then your tenant would call us for support, we don't really have any way to track that person and know who they are and if they're really supposed to be calling. If your tenant calls up and says, hey, I live here, disconnect my internet, well, you're not the account holder. Well, I'm moving out. Well, now it's like, well, you've got to talk to your landlord. Okay, well, a squirrel chewed through my fiber, send someone out to fix it. Okay, well, you're not the person, your landlord needs to call us. It streamlines it if the actual customer can be the one communicating with us. Anytime an account changes, it activates that $300 fee.
Is your support local? I've actually used them before myself, and your support's tremendous. Are they local?
So during the day, our support is down at 16th and Clay, and then at night, we actually use ISPN, which is down at liNKCity.
Okay, yeah, I've had to call them myself. And then one other question I haven't heard anybody bring up, and I don't think it was in your presentation, is I've run into situations down here before where the equipment on the house is old and eventually gives out, where my internet went down and they had to come out and actually like swap out the box or whatever's on the side of your house. So is that a situation that is going to keep happening? Does this equipment like age out to where you're going to end up with, replacement cost also on this equipment?
It's like any other piece of electronic equipment. It gets old, it wears out. Equipment that tends to be outside tends to wear out faster because you've got, extremes of hot and cold. But yeah, it's equipment will age out eventually, and it will fail, and it does need to be replaced.
What's the life cycle on that stuff?
Well, the life cycle should be 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
On that sort of stuff. Fortunately for us, we have reduced some of our costs with that equipment, so it's not a big deal. But if your equipment had to be replaced, you shouldn't have been charged for that if it was a failure of the equipment.
I wasn't charged by it. Okay. I was just pointing out, people are asking about support and things like that, and I've experienced it actually firsthand myself, where I've had an outage and I've called and they've sat there with me and troubleshot over the phone, what's wrong. One time at my old house, they were like, look, it's not you, it's the equipment. And they sent somebody right over, swapped it out. And that's what he told me, the same thing you said. He's like, after a while, we just have to come out here and replace it. So just, you guys are wondering about costs, and we have really good tech support, and they do actually have to send people out and replace equipment at times. So anyways, I appreciate you.
So some of the equipment on the houses have been there since 2006.
Do you have a rough estimate on what one of the media converters costs now? What's that costing you to replace one? Just the box itself?
The media converters, if the optic isn't bad in it, then the media converters cost us about $35 to replace.
Okay. Further questions? All right, if not, then I much appreciate the presentation. Thank you. I don't think anyone here was on council at the time when this first came around, so very informative and good to know what's going on with our network in our city. So appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
With that, we're going to do something a little unusual tonight, and that we're going to adjourn into 2 executive sessions from here before coming back for the 7 p.m. meeting.
All right, item 3, consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0212.
We need a first and a second. Yeah.
I'll move to adjourn, please.
No, we're not adjourning. We're going to the executives. Oh,
So moved.
To
probably
go
correct.
to
I'm sorry.
executive
There we go.
session.
So make sure we're clear there. He made the motion. There's a second. I'll call the roll, please. Even throw me off here.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
All right, item 4, consideration of a request to hold a recess into an executive session as requested by the city councilor to be held on this date on a litigation matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0211.
Move to approve.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes. Councilmember Graves.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll step away. I'm not sure what's happening with the live stream. I should have worked this out beforehand. We may be on, we may go away. I don't know, but we should be back around 7 p.m. for the regular session. Thank you.